Good afternoon, everybody. I think you. Is it working? Okay. So, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here. I'm Victoria Jimenez. I'm head of sector for urban development at the Union for the Mediterranean. The Union for the Mediterranean is an intergovernmental organization gathering together the 27 EU countries plus 15 countries for the Mediterranean basin. We are working very closely with the Commission on regional projects, and for us in the Mediterranean, climate change is a priority, since the region is one of the regions more strongly hit by the effects of climate change, and there are no barriers as regards the effect of climate change. What happens in Morocco affects also to Spain. What happens in Egypt affects also to the neighborhood countries. So we are here today to promote two regional projects that are funded by the European Commission. We tend to hear about we tend to think about cold when we speak about energy poverty. That's we tend to what comes to our mind is cold weather and heating, but I think that when we think about energy poverty, we should think also about hot weathers, because we should be able to ensure decent temperature inside the housing units in our Mediterranean countries as well. So we will be presenting today two projects, meetMED and PEEB. We will be hearing what some countries, as Morocco, for instance, has achieved through their participation in the PEEB project, and we'll see. We will try to inspire some other countries, as Egypt, that will be here presenting, or Jordan, and we will be counting on having other countries involved in the project in the near future. So, without further ado, I will give the floor to Laura Ligier, that will be representing here the European Commission today, so that she can make some short introductory remarks. So, Laura, the floor is yours.
Much, Victoria. Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me well. Thank you for the invitation to this event. It's a pleasure to be here to set a little bit the scene about the framework which is in place to support energy efficiency from the EU perspective. So, energy efficiency is actually one of the key energy-related priority sectors which was identified in a joint communication which is called Renewed Partnership with the Southern Neighborhood in 2021. So which really emphasized in this communication that there is a clear mention of a focus on buildings and appliances. So we have also another framework, which is the EU External Energy Management in a Changing World communication, which is even more recent, from 2022, and it also stresses the need to accelerate the rollout of renewables and energy efficiency across the world, including in the Western Balkans, in Africa, in the Mediterranean, and in Indo-Pacific region. So this really reaffirms actually commitments which were taken by the Union for the Mediterranean member states, which adopted actually a ministerial declaration on energy in 2021. So we have all these support frameworks which are in place actually to support action in this domain. The Commission is actually already financing energy efficiency projects in numerous partner countries through bilateral but also regional cooperation. So we have, in addition, also an instrument which is the Neighborhood Investment Platform blending instrument. And this is also an instrument which mixes grants and loans to really increase the project's impacts. And now this instrument is actually also giving increased attention two countries' clean energy transition. So we have really a good framework in place for this support. So after actually focusing more on the energy efficiency in industries in the past 10 years, the EU intends to actually more boost now energy efficiency in buildings, and there are a number of initiatives which are now in place to implement and to materialize this report in a very tangible way. So the Commission is currently preparing a contract under this neighborhood investment platform with the AFD to implement the PEEB-MED program we are talking about today. And so we also seize the opportunity to have this event to thank and to congratulate the AFD for having initiated the first PEEB worldwide, which became also a great source of inspiration for this PEEB-MED that we are discussing. The Commission is also financing another project which is called meetMED 2, and this really also aims at boosting energy efficiency in buildings and appliances in partner countries. We will discuss it, of course, also today, because this project actually works in perfect synergy with PEEB-MED and really should contribute to paving the way for other massive investments to take place in this domain. Finally, we have another instrument, which is the Neighborhood Development and International Cooperation Instrument of the European Union. And there is a new fund which is in particular important in this framework, which is the European Fund for Sustainable Development Plus. And in its deployment, there is actually a call for proposal which was launched towards international financing institutions. And this is really to receive actually proposed investment projects in neighborhood region and also in Africa to benefit from a new EU guarantee scheme. And so we really hope that by mid-July, when the application will be closing, that we will discover also ambitious initiatives in the area of energy efficiency in buildings and appliances. And as a very final note for this introduction, and a bit to have also the full context, I would just refer to another important framework on strand of work actually in the Union for the Mediterranean, which is the one on sustainable urban development. So in the Union for the Mediterranean, we have worked very much in the past few years on developing actually a strategic action plan for sustainable urban development towards 2040. And this is really a guidance document along with a specific plan on housing that were both adopted in 2021. So we have conceived these documents as strategic guidance for national governments, for regional progress towards principles, best practices in urban development, in governance, and also for affordable and sustainable housing. And we have with this document a sort of strategic vision and a series of principles to be applied across the Euro-Mediterranean region. And so we really encourage policy action coordination in these domains. And so we warmly invite you to consult these documents while preparing projects, preparing investments in cities, in urban areas, so that they are considering these principles that are also, of course, contributing to the implementation of the new urban agenda. So this is, in a few words, what I wanted to mention, and thank you so much again. Back to you, Victoria. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. We will be promoting within the UFM regional platform the two projects that will be presented here today. And now we are very honored to have here with us today Mrs. Sonja Layton-Cohn, Acting Deputy Executive Director of UNEP. Sonja.
Good afternoon, Excellencies, distinguished guests, friends and colleagues. The Mediterranean has birthed empires and cultures that have shaped the course of human history. It is a region that is equally famed for its architecture, for the buildings that have become emblems of the region's rich diversity. Marcus Aurelius, one of the Mediterranean's most famous sons, once compared the art of life to the art of a wrestler, and he wrote that in life we should stand ready and firm to meet onsets which are sudden and unexpected. The region's greatest buildings appear to have been designed with this in mind. They were built to withstand sudden, unexpected shocks. Many still stand today, centuries after they were built. Today, we are more fortunate than our ancestors. The gift of modern science has given us a portal into the future. Thanks to climate science, many of the shocks coming our way are no longer unexpected, which means we have the luxury to prepare for them. Ladies and gentlemen, the Mediterranean is on a collision course with nature. The climate crisis is heating the region 20% faster than the global average. Increasingly, intense wildfires, flooding, and heat waves are etched into the Mediterranean's future. The built environment is particularly at risk, and so too are the people living and working in the buildings. If we're to limit these risks, it is absolutely critical that the buildings of today are fit for the shocks of tomorrow. This means designing and constructing buildings that protect people from the worst impact of the climate crisis. But buildings have another job too. They can also be used to cut the emissions that are fueling the climate crisis in the first place. So they have a major role to play in determining how bad this crisis gets. Currently, the building and construction sector causes 37% of all energy-related CO2 emissions. Clearly, the way we build today is fueling the climate crisis. Future trends are not promising either. Half of the buildings that will be standing in 2050 have not yet even been built. The equivalent of Paris is projected to be added in floor space every 5 days. And in Asia and in Africa, building stock is expected to double by 2050. We simply cannot achieve the climate goals the world set in Paris unless we radically transform the sector. For this to happen, 3 things must occur by 2030. First of all, new buildings must be net carbon in operation with a massive push to retrofit existing buildings to make them energy efficient. Secondly, emissions from the manufacture, transport, installation, maintenance, and disposal of building materials must be cut by at least 40%. By 2050 at the latest, all new and existing buildings must be net zero across their whole life cycle, from their manufacture all the way to their use. The good news is that the measures we take to cut emissions in the building sector are the very methods that will also make the buildings more resilient. Take the increasingly extreme temperature spikes we're seeing as an example. Heat waves mean that buildings need to use more energy to cool them down. So, when it gets hot, we burn more fossil fuels, fueling more climate change. When it turns, makes it hotter, a vicious cycle. But when we use passive building designs, we can massively reduce the need for cooling. This lowers the amount of energy that the building uses, cutting emissions. We can also add green roofs that sequester carbon or reflective roofs that radiate the heat back, cooling both the homes and the planet. So by transforming the way we design buildings, It is possible to protect people from extreme heat and cut down on emissions at the same time. Nature-based solutions are another win-win solution for the construction sector. Replanting areas that have been disturbed with trees, roof gardens and food forests can lower the risks of flash floods, cool buildings, lower our energy demand, provide food to residents and draw down carbon. Third, we need to recognize buildings and constructions as the massive job and investment machine they are. The built environment is responsible for around 7% of global employment, or more than 200 million jobs, and accounts for between 11 and 13% of global GDP. Building low emissions, resilient buildings also make financial sense. Investment opportunities in efficient buildings are projected to hit $24 trillion within the next 8 years. Yet, even though global investments in energy efficiency in the building sector rose by $184 billion in 2020, just above 3% of all investments into buildings and construction annually are for energy efficiency improvements. By the same token, if we delay action, the financial cost will be enormous. But there is only so much that one sector can do. Transformation will not be possible without government goodwill, both at national and local levels. We need to initiate changes to building standards, including mandatory building energy codes. We need strong financial incentive schemes making energy efficiency improvements. Passive house deep retrofits and sustainable materials need to be the new normal over conventional buildings and construction approaches. And we need to use public procurement as a lever to make public building sustainability front runners. Industry also has a key role to play in implementing these changes on the ground. We need the private sector to start rethinking building supply chains that take into account greenhouse gas emissions into its cost calculations, low carbon materials, and sustainable construction options, and offer them to the clients. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to welcome you here today. UNEP is delighted to host the Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction, which is working with government and industry to implement solutions to transform the buildings and construction sector. We're especially honored that the climate change ambassador of the government of France has announced that France will lead a buildings breakthrough target linked to the Glasgow breakthroughs. We're looking forward to our close collaboration and cooperation and to uniting countries towards shifting our buildings towards sustainability by 2030. But to be successful, we need to all work together. And this event is really a chance for us to do just that, to learn from each other and to find ways to cooperate at the national, regional, and international levels. It will also showcase successful and upcoming initiatives that are trailblazing a path towards the construction of the low-emission, resilient buildings of the future. So as we proceed, let us take Marcus Aurelius' advice to heart. Let us approach the transformation of the sector with the mindset of a wrestler whose firm stance is ready to meet the sudden shocks that we know the future holds. If we can do this, then we can safeguard the health and well-being of the region's people, ensuring that its rich culture continues to flourish. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia, for your inspiring words. And we will pass now to the policy panel, where we will be hearing from we will be hearing national initiatives from 2 countries, from Egypt and from Morocco. We will give first the floor to Dr. Abdelhalek Ibrahim, Assistant Minister at the Ministry of Housing, Utilities and Urban Communities of Egypt.
Okay, thank you, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So, talking about the green housing in Egypt, as Egypt, one of the developing countries, is quite difficult because more than 40% of the urban in Egypt are poor of life and poor of quality of built environment, and it's not easy to ask people who are living in a poor to convert their houses into green, and this is affect the climate change and related aspects, because these housing mess the basic infrastructure. So it's a kind of how to make a balance between the brown agenda, the social agenda, and the environment. It's a kind of challenges. But when we make an assessment, when we made an exercise for making an assessment for a group of housing types and try to measure the thermal comfort and how the design affected the comfort, we discovered that about 10 to 20% of the living cost increase because of the design, because these houses are not efficient enough for energy efficiency, because they depend on the artificial air conditioning rather than the natural air conditioning. And at the end, if they are poor, they will affect negatively from the economic side. So we need to raise the awareness of people for making their cities or making their homes into green, in order to have an overall objective to decrease the low emissions at the country level, and also to take the benefits from reducing the consumption of energy and electricity consumption. In order to doing that, the government has 2 main initiatives. The first initiative, the government of Egypt produced a green pyramid code. So this is a code for building and planning and design the environment, the neighborhood as well. The code consists of a number of principles such as energy efficiency, water efficiency, indoor environmental quality, and also material and resources. So this code will, it's a kind of certificate for any housing projects in the future for a particular project. The second interventions, it's a green initiative projects, and this done at the new cities and the existing cities as well. The existing cities have a problem because cities in Egypt, the existing cities in Egypt, are very compact and dense. So we have only from 5 to 10% of the total area green spaces. So the per capita in Cairo, 0.3 meters square for each person. So if we make a comparison between this number and the benchmark is from 8 to 10 meters square per capita. So we need to have an initiative to increase the green spaces in the existing cities, and this is we have a number of solutions for the existing cities. Regarding the housing in the new cities, we have an initiative for implementing about 25,000 dwelling, now currently implemented and finished by the end of this year, and are expecting next year we reach 100,000 dwelling unit based on the green housing technique. This the green housing based on the assessment we did, as I mentioned in the beginning. We make an assessment and taking some lessons in terms of the material, in terms of the design of the building, the clustering of the building. All of these interventions, all of these assessment making us a new interventions for and new housing in the new cities, and this is part of the Green Initiative projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdel Khaled. Now we give the floor to Mr. Ilyas Esabai, Head of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy from the Direction of Quality and Technical Affairs of the Ministry of National Planning, Urban Development, Housing and Urban Policy in Morocco.
Thank you, Madam Victoria. Thank you, Madam Victoria. Good afternoon, distinguished speakers, dear audience. I'm glad to participate today in this expert panel about addressing low emission and resilient buildings in the Mediterranean region, and to be able to share some insights about Moroccan experience in terms of policies and action to promote low carbon transition in building sector. As you know, building sector is responsible for 35% of world energy consumption and 38% of CO2 emissions, of which 10% are coming from the building industry. And in Africa, buildings account for 61% of final energy consumption and 32% of final energy emissions. And as it was evidenced by many IPCC reports, buildings and construction sector is an essential action area for keeping humanity under 1.5 degrees pathway and ensuring humanity is prepared for climate change impacts. And as we all know now, the health crisis and the COVID pandemic has put some light on new requirements for housing and the built environment, especially those related to bioclimatic design and energy performance of housing. We have an increased awareness about the importance of energy performance in buildings, like the lack of thermal and acoustic comfort, need to improve energy performance, and links between ventilation and aeration, and its close links with vulnerability to respiratory diseases. In Morocco, the final energy consumption is about 33%, and the big share is coming from butane gas. It's about 79%, and 25% from this energy consumption is in residential sector, and 8.2% in the tertiary sector. Now I will be speaking about some selective actions and policies to enhance resilience and decarbonization of the building sector. And many of those actions were undertaken thanks to the PEEB program. Before going to policies and concrete actions, here is a small overview about some of the strategic framework to enhance resilience and decarbonization in the building sector. The first big strategy is the National Strategy for Sustainable Development, which concerns a lot of sectors, but between them we have the building sector, and it dedicates also access to the exemplarity of state as a lever for implementation of sustainable development. We have also the new energy efficiency strategy for 2030, and the Moroccan national determined contribution. The first action that I want to present is the Moroccan Thermal Building Code. It's a mandatory regulation that sets energy performance rules for buildings. It aims to reduce the heating and cooling needs of buildings and improve thermal comfort in buildings and also contribute to the reduction of national energy bill and greenhouse gas emissions by setting technical specification to be respected in terms of thermal characteristics of the envelope through two approaches, a perspective and a performance-based approach. Then we have the minimum energy performance standards. It's establishing minimum energy performance thresholds for energy-intensive appliances. Work was done for two energy-consuming appliances, which are refrigerators and air conditioners. Then we have a national label for energy efficiency in buildings, which is under development. It was developed, but it was not put into operation. It's a certification tool for energy quality of residential buildings in Morocco. It has some mandatory provisions and some optional provisions. Yes. And to meet the challenge of resilience and decarbonization in building sector, we were inspired by the global ABC model. So we created a national alliance as a partnership framework to mobilize all the sector stakeholders, including all the professional federations. And the goal is to make a meaningful contribution to achieving climate change goals. This alliance aims to develop a common vision to fight climate change in partnership with all stakeholders and to raise a little bit awareness of the building sector to reduce GHG emissions. In partnership with the PEEB program, we prepared a project which is called Improving Energy Performance of Moroccan Households. We build on Nama habitat that was developed in Morocco in 2016 to develop a bankable project that was submitted to the Nama Facility Fund. The project now is under detailed preparation phase, it includes three main components. The first component is construction of new energy efficient housings by an incentive that will cover the additional energy efficiency costs for social and min-income housing and rewards the energy efficiency ambition beyond the national regulation. In this component, private real estate developers and local subsidiaries of Al Omran Group, which is the national housing operator, will track energy efficiency improvements in new constructions. The second component is promoting energy efficient appliances, and the third component is a technical assistance program that will support regulatory improvements and enforcement and provide technical assistance and awareness raising for households on energy efficiency. Then we are also developing a pilot project on improving the living conditions of rural households in mountainous areas affected by climate change. This project is targeting some specific category of citizens, which are people living in landlocked mountainous areas in the Middle Atlas that are experiencing difficult climatic conditions. And it aims to improve their living conditions and reduce the impacts of climate change through four main components about rehabilitation and upgrading of housing, equipping homes with clean energy production, improving infrastructure, and preserving local knowledge and cultural and intangible heritage through implementation of some generating activities and capacity building. And as I said before, many of those actions were undertaken with the support of the PEEB program. We started cooperating with PEEB program in 2018, and we worked mainly on four big work areas. The first one is supporting the regulatory framework, and in this area, we worked on supporting development of a financial mechanism for energy efficiency in buildings. The second area is supporting the operationalization of the Moroccan Building Alliance for Climate, which was created in 2016. The third area is supporting a technical and financial setup of bankable energy efficiency projects in the building sector. And in that framework, we submitted the NAMA facility, the project to the NAMA Facility Fund. And the last area is the capacity building and knowledge sharing. We organized many awareness raising seminars on energy efficiency in buildings for the benefit of various departments and also for our department, ministerial department, and also many training sessions on energy efficiency financing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ilias. Now, before passing to the expert panel, where we will be having presentations on the PEEB and the meetMED project, I don't know if someone wants to make any question to the Egyptian. Sonja, are you?
I'm going to leave.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming. I don't know if someone wants to make any question to the Egyptian or the Moroccan representative. Okay. Are there?
Thank you. Very interesting projects. I'm the president of the International Society of Urban Health. And my question is about in the criteria. I mean, there's a number of benefits that can be accrued by energy efficient buildings. But on the other hand, if you trap air or if you use materials which can be carcinogenic, for example, then you're undoing your good. So how are you responding to that? Do you also have criteria which are public health criteria in terms of the building materials, in terms of the ventilation, because of, take COVID. Ventilation is crucial for, reducing infection rates. So I wonder if you can say something about how are you responding to that. Thank you. A very interesting project.
So when we make the assessment for the existing housing and translate this assessment into a code, a green code for building, this consists of a number of 4 components, and each component have a number of sub-criteria. So, for example, energy efficiency has a number of criteria in order to save energy in house. But as you mentioned, the criteria is quite is not static because it's different according to the situation of, for example, the health situation of the country, of the world, or different from social class to another class. Because again, when I'm making a green housing for high income or for the middle income, it's different than the low income or the poor people in terms of the material, in terms of the design, in terms of the density, and so on. So we have a number of criteria, and each criteria has a scoring. So it's a kind of a scoring system for the importance of criteria to another. Did it?
More or less. I mean, you didn't say if you have health criteria. For example, asbestos, is it forbidden? I mean, there's
Right.
the amount of ventilation in any building can be for the poor or for the rich. It does impact on transmission of infectious diseases such as COVID. Are those criteria contemplated? I ask that because in some of the green building codes, they are not contemplated. But you know, time is evolving,
yeah.
and presumably they could have been.
To be honest, before COVID, we haven't in our code a criteria for measuring the health and the impact of the design or the housing on the health. But before COVID, we're talking about the resilient cities, our hand to make cities related to climate change. But now the situation is become different. I'm talking about the healthy city and how to make the city as a whole healthy for at the building level and at the city level as well. So we need to revisiting the criteria because we have a new situation. The situation now is different after COVID.
I think Jawad wants to.
Yeah,
say
short comment, not responding necessarily to the question, but 2 years ago we submitted the paper to G20 Saudi Arabia, and it was about promoting smart cities and taking into consideration the water, energy, food, health nexus. It was demonstrated, for example, in many countries that using the wastewater treatment network, they could detect earlier, the COVID cases, and they could, monitor better the expansion of the COVID. So I think the same. So probably in the future we need obviously to make this more stronger, the nexus in energy health in a way that you describe it, that we need to obviously take into consideration the material that we use and the energy to make them. So we need to care about energy efficiency, but also without putting health in risk. Thank you.
Ilyas?
Thank you for this question first. I represent a direction, the Quality and Technical Affairs Direction, which is the direction in the Ministry of Housing in charge of developing, let's say, all the technical regulations in buildings. So to be honest, before the crisis, we did the health crisis, we were not a lot aware of this specific area, but the crisis, the COVID pandemic, made us realize that we don't have something mandatory for ventilation, especially in Morocco. So we started looking for what we have in terms of standards, and we found that we have many standards, but they are voluntary. So now we are working on developing a mandatory regulation about ventilation and aeration in residential buildings. We will start by residential buildings. So that's one.
Just for reference, I used to work for the World Health Organization, and we developed a whole criteria. So there is quite a lot of technical information that can be
Yeah.
a resource.
In fact, at the UFM, we are collaborating with WHO right now. At this moment, we are working on more precisely on how port affects the cities nearby in terms of air pollution, land pollution, water pollution, and so on. But we are exploring also other possibilities. So we are already collaborating with them, and we have opened the path, and we will accompany our countries in addressing these health issues. There was another question.
Hello, my name is Yusuf El Tawil. I'm an architect. I had a question concerning the housing in Egypt. So Dr. Abdel Khalik mentioned that 10 to 20% of the living cost increase because of the house design, and it's kind of hard to convince poor people to change to a more sustainable way. But what about the new cities, such as the new administrative capital and the new Alamein city? Since these cities are being built from scratch, are the house design taken into account? And my second question is about the green initiative projects. As these projects, I know that they are taken into account in the new cities, but what about the existing cities already, like the places in Cairo that are too crowded to put any green space in? Is there any initiative for that? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. The second question about the green initiative for the existing cities, in upgrading and developing the existing cities, we have 5 strategies. One of these strategies is to reuse the brownfield into green spaces and public surfaces, and this is definitely will impact positive on the density and the percentage of gray and green pattern, because the ideal case, you have a percentage of the green spaces for each city from about 20 to 25% of the urban agglomeration. But in Egypt, only 5% maximum. So in order to increase that, we need first to reuse a brownfield into green spaces. Also, we need also to for the road network as well, because the road network is another point related to accessibility and mobility, but also to the density of the city. For the first question about the new cities in Egypt, one of the main principles for planning Al-Alamein and the fourth generation, because in Egypt now we are working in the fourth generation of the new cities. We have 3 generations before, starting 1978. So before starting the fourth generation, we make an assessment for the three generation and try to learn what are the common mistakes of these cities. And one of them was the mixed use development, the density, and also the greening as well. One of the main points that I should raise is the fourth generation of the new cities based on the smart city techniques. And the smart city in Egypt is not for branding or not for we need to brand Al-Alamein by smart city, but because smart city is the solution for our problems. And our problems is energy efficiency, water scarcity, and also urban management. And all these 3 problems can be solved by smart techniques. So try to make our cities more sustainable. My saying is not meaning all of the new capital and all of the Al-Alamein having got good lessons, but both pros and cons. But at the end of the day, when I'm making a comparison between the Egyptian experience in planning and developing the fourth generation of the new cities, we discovered that it's better than the previous generations.
Okay, let's pass now to the expert panel. We will have now the opportunity to hear about 2 projects, meetMED and PEEB. First, Abdelkhalek was referring to existing cities and new cities. Let's see, I'm very curious to hear from now the following panelists what can be done in the existing cities. Let's give the floor first to Dr. Jawad El-Haras. He is Executive Director of the Regional Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, RICRE, based in Egypt. So, Dr. Jawad, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Victoria. Good afternoon, distinguished panelists, distinguished audience. Pleasure to be with you today. So I will briefly present meetMED 2 project, what we do in this project, vis-a-vis the energy efficiency in building and appliances in the Mediterranean region. So if my presentation would be there, I can slide. Yeah. So I will briefly present the goals in the context of the project. So it was already mentioned earlier in the many presentations that the building sector is one of the most consuming, energy consuming sectors. If we talk globally, it's around 40%. If we talk about the Mediterranean, it would be between 20% to up to 35%. Huge, with the rapid population growth and urbanization. So obviously that's make it really impactful to really invest in energy efficiency in building and appliances in the region. And obviously it was also it's this energy efficiency in building also is in the core of the action plan of the energy efficiency action plan in the countries of the Mediterranean region. So the project is Mitigation Enabling Energy Transition in the Mediterranean region. So we are running the phase 2. We started with phase 1 2 years earlier. From the first phase, we got many lessons, and one of the lessons is we need to focus on energy efficiency in building appliances. So we started last year. We are running for 4 years till 2024. It is funded by the European Commission, and the main organization coordinating this project, meetMED, which is which is the international no-profit organization gathering the agencies around the Mediterranean dealing with the energy efficiency or energy management in the region, in the countries, sorry. And RICRI, which is the intergovernmental organization. We are having 17 Arab countries on board. So the main objective is to enable the adoption of energy efficiency and renewable energy practices in the Arab countries. So we work, as you can see down in the logos, so many national agencies of energy efficiency or energy management in the Mediterranean countries. Sorry. So as I mentioned it, so we have done a lot of work during the phase one. So we build on this first phase of the project, so we can access to all the publications and the output of the project on the website. So the objective of this second phase of the project is mainly to contribute to improving the energy security of the target countries. We have 8 southern Mediterranean countries, target countries: Algeria, Morocco, Egypt, Libya, Jordan, Palestine, Lebanon, and Tunisia. So the idea obviously to reinforce, to foster transition to low carbon economy, so by contributing to more stable, efficient, competitive, climate resilient, socio-economic context in the countries. So 2 pillars, so the massive deployment of renewable energy and energy efficiency measures in building the appliances sectors, in particular the southern Mediterranean, accelerate obviously the clean energy transition, and the public awareness, which is very important, public awareness on the energy's major stakes and challenges increases, so fostering public and private sectors involvement towards more energy efficient building and appliances sectors. Sorry. As I say, the focus is on energy efficiency in building and also on appliances. So energy efficiency and resilience building, this is the objective, and also efficient and performant appliances. So this is obviously contribution to the energy transition process in the region. So we have very ambitious targets in terms of share of the renewable energy mix in the upcoming years, but also the level of energy efficiency. So there are a lot of effort to be done. We need to identify and remove the bottlenecks. We have many. So in terms of regulations, for example, sometimes we have regulation, but it's not enforced. We have sometimes not harmonized norms or standards. So a lot of work to be done in this area. Also in terms of there is no technical tools, and also capacity building is needed, so training expertise. In terms of the market also, it needs to be restructured, so effort need to be done in this area. Also on access to finance, this is very important. So there is funding, there are funding from international financial institutions, etc. But many countries don't know how to access to this finance. The awareness is very important. Though, as I said, the public sector, the private sector, how they can contribute to this effort of more energy efficient building in the region. So we have several work packages. The idea is to intensify energy efficiency measures and increase the investment in energy efficiency in the building appliances. The output one expected from work package 2 is to have enforcement of the laws, regulations, harmonization of standards and codes. Work package 3 and 4 we have as output, main output, structuring the market and having tools available to help the decision makers in particular. Work package 5 has as a output, main output, financing instrument available. So we have several activities in this area. We'll explain later. So the idea is to facilitate the access to finance, and the work package 6 has as an output mobilization of obviously of the different sectors of the society, and also dissemination of the output of the project. So we work at regional level, but a lot of work also is being done at national level. At local level, closely with the national agencies of energy efficiency in different target countries. So the focus on activities promoting efficient building in the Mediterranean. So in terms of harmonization of policies, so we have organized the first meetMED week the last March. We gathered the main stakeholders in the region. So we tackled all the work packages, and also we built task force on building. So we have energy efficiency building codes, building renovation, labeling and training, and financing. These are the main task force on building. So also the target is the main objective also to have sort of regional energy efficiency observatory to support decision making on monitoring and evaluation. In terms of work package 3, to promote efficient building, so we have a couple of demo actions. So implementing the priority tool in Algeria and Palestine. Also providing technical assistance on energy performance contract, in particular in Tunisia and Palestine. Training materials are available online. Also a guide and methodology for the water energy nexus in Jordan, Algeria, and Morocco and Palestine. So it was mentioned earlier. So the nexus means that we need to ensure not only energy efficiency but also the water efficiency. So when it comes to building, so water recycling, so we need to take into consideration both at the same time. Also tools and audits for schools renovation in Algeria, Jordan, Lebanon, and Palestine. Also some tools for public building concerning all the countries. Promoting as well the green building labeling in all the countries. Also studying the potential of district cooling. Last March we invited all the countries to visit the district cooling in the new administrative capital in Cairo. The capacity building activities also, so targeting twinning agreements, professional training, MOOCs and webinars, guidance, study tours. We are expecting a study tour in Paris next September, etc. In terms of the work package 5, which is access to finance, so it's about informing, promoting the existing funding mechanisms, identifying and designing the bankable projects, gathering the whole, the stakeholders, so the energy sector people, the housing people, but also the international financial institutions, the local banks, and all the private sector interested in this area. So network and dialogues is done through organizing what we call Mediterranean Sustainable Energy Investment Forum. We have a regional one, we have national one. Last month we organized one in Jordan, and one will be organized probably next September in Morocco as well. So this to foster the links between the financial organization and also the building sector stakeholders. So this is from the last meet midweek. So we had a very interesting participants from all the stakeholders from the region, from the European Commission, from the target countries, from the League of Arab States as well. And the main output was energy efficiency first. So a lot, we're talking in the Arab countries, we're talking about more than $17 billion US dollar in the last years invested in renewable energy. But energy efficiency, there is not equivalent investments. So we need really to invest more in energy efficiency because it's like a new, a new energy resource. So some of the activities that are planned soon in this year. So we have, tomorrow, online course. Training course on energy efficiency financing mechanism with a focus on Tunisia and Egypt. So tomorrow it will be online. It's available for everyone. On July, by the end of July, we have also technical training on energy efficiency indicators in Jordan. So we will train people on how to develop this energy efficiency indicators. In September, we have a district cooling program and study tour in Paris. So to show in the good practices from the Fraîcheur de Paris in France. September 2020, so we have 3 national roundtables in Morocco, one about district cooling, one about the appliances, and one about sustainable energy investments. So we are going to gather all the stakeholders, plus the local banks, also the financial institutions. Also, we are expecting a call for tenders for twinning agreements to be launched by ADEM. By the way, the project manager is with us here, Agathe Lacombe, the project manager. And in November, we will have a lot of activities in the COP at the Sharm el-Sheikh. So we have a pavilion, and we are expecting many side events. So we are welcoming any cooperation also in this during the COP. So that it was probably very brief, but I will be happy to respond to any question. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Now we give the floor to Isabelle Gebert, Head of Secretariat of the Program for Energy Efficiency in Buildings, PEEB, managing by GIZ and AFD.
Thank you, Victoria. I hope you can hear me well. Yeah, we've heard extensively about the problem and the challenge at hand by my previous speakers, and especially Ms. Leighton-Kane has laid out what is at stake. Well, and here comes the solution. Here with PEEB, the Program for Energy Efficiency in Buildings. And yes, we all know the figures, and many of you have referred to them. It's about 40% that the building and construction sector is contributing to global greenhouse gas emissions, and this is immense. And even if renewables are on the rise, this is clearly not enough. The construction sector is booming in many countries, as we know, and there's an enormous increase in floor space area expected. We have heard the figure, it's about doubling until 2016, and this is, as Ms. Leighton-Cohen has said, the size of Paris every week. So on the one hand, this is a huge economic opportunity, which he has also laid out. But at the same time, this is a huge risk that energy consumption and emissions from the sector will explode in the decades to come. And this is if we do not consciously shape the transformation from today. And the risk is intensified again as climate change is evolving, and Sonja has also laid out this, and cooling needs are rising, and buildings are at a particular risk for extreme weather events, and we have also heard that in the Mediterranean regions this is indeed even a larger threat than in other regions. So we really need a massive shift towards sustainable construction retrofitting, and this is particular also a need in increasing energy efficiency. Yes, and here's where PEEB is coming in. PEEB, the Project for Energy Efficiency in Building, is transforming the building sector through a combination of financing, policy and capacity building, with the vision to achieve a zero-emission resilient building sector. PEEB is a French-German initiative that has been launched at COP22, and this unique value of combining financing and policy has this opportunity to really bring projects to scale and across the entire sector to achieve long-lasting sector transformation. For this, PEEB can tap into the expertise of its implementing agencies. This is the French Development Bank, AFD, which has been referred to as well in the previous presentations. AFD is bringing the money. The German International Cooperation Agency, GIZ, where myself is coming from, with our expertise and local presence in many countries around the world, and ADEME, the French Agency for Ecological Transition. Together we provide, since 2018, policy support, large-scale project financing and professional capacity building. So how does PEEB work? On the financing side, and we just heard from my previous speaker that this financing is key and is also a huge lack in the energy efficiency and building sector. So AFD is with its money making large-scale building projects green through technical support and funding. Currently, PEEB is supporting over 40 large-scale infrastructure projects in about 30 countries, and in 2021 these projects represented about 3 billion euros worth of AFD's financing pipeline. So these are huge numbers, and this financing impact is combined with policy. And here GIZ is bringing its expertise, as I said, on the ground, and we work with policymakers in our 5 partner countries. That is Morocco. We've already heard about our collaboration extensively by Ilyas. Tunisia, also in the Mediterranean region. Then we are also working with Senegal, Mexico, and Vietnam. We particularly shape the transformation through regulations and standards, and also support actionable roadmaps to implement NDCs in the building sector. So in this finance and policy approach is combined with capacity building. Thus we work with project owners to policymakers and municipal agents, and we also serve as a knowledge hub for expertise on green building and financing internationally. And this international engagement is also a very important part of PEEB, and it's also growing currently indeed. And one part of it, and we also already heard about it, it's our collaboration with the Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction, hosted by UNEP, and where PEEB is co-leading the work area finance. And also our work with IDFC, the International Development Finance Club, a club of 27 development banks, is an important collaboration that we have initiated last year to stimulate knowledge sharing on green building finance among development banks. And through this we want to share best practices from our PEEB approach and bring it to scale through other development banks. So here I want to highlight a few examples from PEEB in the Mediterranean region in particular. So we support countries in developing large-scale national incentive programs, and we already heard of this by Elias. that we have worked on this with our Moroccan partners, and in particular also to apply and to get access to climate finance also from international sources. More specifically, I want to highlight our activities in Tunisia. We have here supported the hospital program, which is a great example of what can actually be achieved by combining policy and finance. In 2019, Tunisia received a 158 million loan by AFD, which supports, was there to improve the energy efficiency in 2 large regional hospitals. And at the same time, the policy side of PEEB has provided training and supported the partners with an energy efficiency guide and a green building code, which was established for hospitals. And so this combination of the financing and the policy support, Tunisia is now able to make 11 more planned hospitals energy efficient by 2030. With a total volume of about 1 billion euro, which has been actually mobilized from other sources. So this is a very interesting example where we also see how actually the conditions of like workers in the hospitals and patients become get improved by energy efficiency measures in the sector. Just to give you a small glimpse of what PEEB has reached beyond that in the Mediterranean region so far, I will name a few projects that PEEB has been supporting, especially through the AFD financing pipelines. This is the renovation and extension of private schools in Egypt, indeed, and Lebanon and Morocco as well, the construction of a nursing school in Palestine, an upgrade of pharmaceutical facilities also in Morocco, and an upgrade of Tunisia's national port infrastructure. The overall pipeline in the region is about 600 million euro that is supported by PEEB, so this is also an important sum. Now I want to close by pointing to the next steps we will take in the region, and my previous speaker on the panel from the European Commission has already pointed to the PEEB Mediterranean branch that will be launched this year, the meetMED. So Laura has already announced that AFD and the European Commission will partner up to launch this regional initiative in 7 countries in the region. And here we will work with Algeria, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Morocco, the Palestinian territories, and Tunisia. meetMED will also combine technical project assistance to integrate energy and climate targets in line with the NDCs, with investment grants to partially cover the extra costs of energy efficiency measures. meetMED will closely coordinate with our partners here present, with UFM and with meetMED. And it is there to raise awareness, disseminate knowledge, and unlock synergies between policy support actions and energy efficiency financing. So again, here we will bring the PEEB approach to scale, and we'll bring it to the region in a more advanced manner. So we are here today, and we have tested the PEEB approach for more than 4 years now. And yes, it brings solutions to the ground and also to scale. And we're now at the point where we really want to amplify the PEEB approach at the international level through meetMED, and we are very, very eager and very happy to be able to continue with support of the European Union our work in the Mediterranean region. And indeed, we also see great potential to extend this approach to other banks and to other regions around the world. So we're looking forward to hopefully continue this journey. Thanks very much for your attention and for having me.
Thank you, Isabel. After your experience in Tunisia and Morocco, we are very excited about extending the program to more countries in the region. So we'll see if we are able to encourage all those countries to be actively involved. Perhaps we can open the floor now. I don't know if someone wants to make any question to Isabel or Jawad. Or, well, if that's not the case, I don't know if someone wants to react. Okay, sorry.
Okay, thanks. My name is Soli Chweni. I'm from the Republic of South Africa. Just a quick one. I just want to check in terms of the expansion of PEEB. Maybe your anticipation around maybe extending to SADC countries, SADC country of the African continent.
Thank you for this question. We are currently in a process of. I mean, we're coming to an end of our first phase, and we are currently very much exploring opportunities to expand the program to different geographies. So besides the meetMED, we are also currently applying for a GCF, so Green Climate Fund support, and with this we could also indeed include more countries in Southern Africa and also in other geographies. Yeah, so we're currently really like in a phase of trying to expand, and of course we're also very open and happy to get other sponsors on board to make this happening.
This is very exciting. I think it's interesting. What's coming to my mind is the possibilities for monitoring, evaluation, and learning in these countries, because as you obviously you want to expand, you need a lot of the local understanding, people who build, people who, the whole setup. And I wonder, I'm sure you must have thought of this. And so can you say something about that aspect, how much of this knowledge then gets translated and incorporated by local universities, local civil society, businesses, etc.?
Yeah, thanks for this question. As I have mentioned, the capacity building is an important aspect of our approach, and in this we have indeed trained about more than 600 people already in our partner countries, and this is raising from like policymakers. And so this is it's really a core of our approach, and so this is something we would also replicate in other regions if we get the chance to. And in terms of data, I'm sorry, I was not sure what you exactly meant. I mean, like what we gather in terms of our impacts, or?
No, I was thinking more in terms of locally generated data, people co-constructing, whatever knowledge comes from this, incorporating their own knowledge, perhaps for vernacular architecture, other things that you can relate to the local environment and build on that.
Yeah, indeed. Thanks for raising this. This is also a core of our approach, indeed. Especially, for example, in Morocco, we have supported the development of the national building codes, and here the national knowledge, the local knowledge, was a very important contribution that has been included to the code. So it's not that we are coming with a one-size-fits-all solution from like an international perspective or from a European perspective. It's really that we work closely on the ground with the local knowledge, and this is also something we very much believe in. Indeed, people have lived in these geographies for centuries, and they often have a very smart and and also future-proofed approaches on how to build and how to build in the climate conditions they are living in. And this is something we really, this is a big issue for us. We really want to include this because these are often very effective passive measures indeed, as passive, like passive ventilation, etc., that have been proved for centuries before like electrical appliances were available. So yes, we really think of this. Thanks.
Okay. If there are no more questions, I think that we can stop here because we all have like very tight agendas, and perhaps it will be well, if we stop now, and you will have the opportunity to address the speakers bilaterally if you want to. I would like to thank again all the speakers for their presentations and for being here, and we are counting in continue collaborating with PEEB and meetMED in the future. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.